Chevra. Bottom of Zayin Amid Aleph. Last two words. This is going to drive me nuts. Okay. Bottom of Zayin Amid Aleph. The last two words. Gufa Amar. Gufa Amar. Rava Rabba. What are we up to over here? Nachamol Rabba. Nachamol Rabba. Gufa Amar Rabba. Sika Chagaya. This is what we just quoted. Siki Chagabi Mavoi. You put schach on top of your Mavoi. Sheyesh lo yilachi. Kashera. It is kosher. Ve'omar Rabba. Din number one. So din number one is Mazel He made a Kiddush this Shabbos. Yeah. By the time we finished Kiddush, I wasn't there yet. Sigal Gabi Mavoi Sheyesh lo yilachi Kashera. Oh, Rav Yossi. Ve'omar Rabba. Sigal Gabi Pasei Birois. Anaya din number two. If you put schach on top of Pasei Birois, Kashera. So Rabba, see, it goes two different dinim. Din number one, you put schach on top of a mavli, it's kosher. Din number two, you put schach on top of Pasei Birois. What's Pasei Birois? Who remembers? The Yomdim, the four corner L-shaped pieces. Rashi prayed to Givaldic a picture. God, I think Rashi's picture is better than the 3D picture over here. The 3D picture is hard to tell what's going on. But if you have these corner pieces around your bar, around your well, and he throws schach on top of that, it is kosher. So two cases that Rava taught us are going to be kosher. Number one, if you put schach on top of a mavoi, and number two, if you put schach on top of the yumdin, on top of these corner pieces around a bar. Says the Gemara, Utsricha, why did Rava have to tell us both dinim? Why don't we just know that since in both of these cases, these are Rishuyos for Shabbos, that the Mavoi is a Rishus for Shabbos, and by Pasei Birois is a Rishus for Shabbos. Why did Rava have to say both of these dinim? Now it's really three dinim if you go back to our case, but two dinim in particular. Diashminan Mavoi, I would have thought, because by a Mavoi, Misham Di'ika, Shtei Defanis. Lamaisa, you have two walls, Malyusa, two stark walls, two good walls. Avol gabe Pasei Birois, Deleka Shtei Defanis Malyusa. By Pasei Birois, you don't actually have two good walls. Therefore, Emalai, you would think it does not work if you put schach on top of the corner pieces. That's why you had to write both of those cases. Now we go the other way. V'yashminan Pasei Birois. If we would have said just the case of Pasei Birois, I would have thought Mishum De'ika Shem Arba Defanis. There's at least the name. There's something there. On each side, you have some sort of wall. Aval schach al gabe mavoi teleka Shem Arba Defanis Emaloi, and therefore you had to write both cases. Now the obvious kasha is, 1 second, V'yashminan hani tarti. And what if we would have said both of these cases? And what would we not have said? Our case, that what? When you have two walls and a little bit, migu dahave sukkah, sukkah Shabbos. Yesterday's also good. That what again? Let's remind ourselves. If I have two walls and a little bit, it's a kosher sukkah. Rabba said in Meir Dika Chiddush that since it's a kosher sukkah, therefore you're allowed to even carry inside that din. So why did Rabba have to say that din? Says the Gemara, V'yashminan hani tarti. I would have thought what? Mechamirta lekilta. Avo mekilta lechamirta. Emaloi. I would have thought it does not work in that case, which is the most mechudashtika case, the case of the migu, saricha. Therefore, he had to say all cases. So if three mayridik chedushim of Rava, and if you were to try to put them in one place in your brain, it's 3 times that we find a halacha elsewhere that we allow it to work for sukkah. By a mavui, 2 walls and a little bit works for mavui. It works for sukkah. By Pasei Birois, these 4 corner pieces allows you to draw water from that well, allows you to have a sukkah. Finally, the case of 2 walls and a little bit, it allows you to have a kosher sukkah. It allows you to carry inside. Yeah?
How big are the corners by Pasei Birois?
So we learn it's an amma each, I believe. If I remember correctly, it's an amma each. Why that is true is we've already spoken out many times. It's just it's just a chiddush. Why would it be true? It's a halach l'Moshe Sinai that Pasibi Rais has a shame mechitza, and therefore it works. Givaldik.
The last case is like what we said yesterday, because only
Oh.
on Shabbos.
Yeah. Shabbos of Sukkah is a mechudesh tikadin that just
It's a special
migu 2 walls and a little bit works for Sukkah. It works at Shabbos Sukkah as well. You don't have a rishos. What do you do? You have 2 walls. Someone sees you carrying it, they think you're crazy. What's going on? Migu has a din of a kosher Sukkah. It has a din. Now the truth is, what about the other way? The Gemara doesn't ask that. What if Rava just said his din by us? Why wouldn't we know Pasi B'Rais? So what? But if 2 walls and a little bit work, Kol Shekain, Pasi B'Rais should work. No?
What Mavoi is what? It's 2 walls with a lechi.
2 walls with a lechi.
But so who says that?
So that really we spoke about yesterday. If you remember, at the end of yesterday's difficult Gemara, we said, Rava, you yourself hold kosher. So we said, it's trichale. We said Rava didn't really need the Bryce, it didn't have to speak out that case. Why not? Because so why all of a sudden now the Bryce didn't have to speak it out? So why does Rava have to speak it out? I'm not exactly sure. And simply by Pasi B'Rais, I don't. I think Taisus Shtickle discusses this. I think so. I think Taisus deals with this abyssal. Okay, let's move on. And now, after 7 blot, we get back to the second din of the Mishnah. What's the second din of the Mishnah? Shechamasa miruba mitzilasa psula. Fundamental din in every sukkah. What does a sukkah need? Shade. If you have more sun than shade, it is possible. Tanu Rabbanan. It says the Gemara. We're about 12 lines down. Zayin Amid Beis, the 2 dots. Chamasa machmas sikuch v'loy machmas defanois. What has to give off the shade in the sukkah? So if you remember, we sort of touched upon this a little bit on Daf Beis. We spoke about a very tall sukkah. We spoke about that it has to be the shade from good, dal defanais. Very good. So now we get to the fundamental din. Where does the shade have to come from? Says the Tanakama, from the schach, and not from the defanais. Rabbi Yeshua Imer, af machmas defanais. Rabbi Yeshua says no, the shade is even allowed to come from the defanais. Af machmas defanais. Says Avada. What's your question? No, more sun. What's the psul?
The more sun.
More sun. So where is the psul if there's more sun than shade coming from the schach? Which means that there's more shade than sun.
But what do you need? What's it blocking? What's the schach blocking? But it's blocking. It's making shade. It's creating shade.
It
sounds like it's right.
Yeah, I know. Withdraw.
Okay.
No, it's two sides. No, excuse me. You are saying a good point. I should speak it out. No, you're saying a good point. I'm sorry. I skipped a step. Let's speak it out. I didn't read the words of the Gemara. I just explained it in English. The din in the Mishnah is you need to have more shade than sun, right? Silasa mirum chamasa, which means if you have more sun than shade, it's possible. It's 2 sides of the same coin. If I need to have more shade, that means if I don't have more shade, it's possible. Says the Gemara, Tana Rabbanan, when I have more sun, the Gemara speaks it out in the shlili, in the negative. I spoke it out in the positive, which is the same thing. Personally, in my brain, found that easier to grasp. But let's speak it out the way the Gemara says it. Says the Gemara, if I have more sun than shade, then it has to be from the schach and not from the walls. Rav Yoshi Amar.
You're saying if the walls are open, you're saying, so the walls let the sun in. You're saying the walls letting the sun in, because machmas means because of.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So you're saying it's okay as long as the schach has enough, is giving enough shade.
Correct.
And the sun, and even if the walls are not giving up any shade, and therefore it's letting in a lot of sun.
It's still beautiful. Correct.
That's what it's saying.
Correct. 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 Very good. Very good. You spoke that perfectly. Again. Once the schach has enough shade, it's kosher. Even though beautiful. Rav Yoshi Amar, no. Still machmas defanais. Even if there is more sun coming, machmas defanais, it's going to be psula. Now, says the Gemara, the truth is, when you see the next line over here, this is hopefully going to become very clear. Amar Rav Yemar bar Shalamaya Mishmeida Baya. My time Rav Yishia. Rav Yishia is a chiddush. We know all the way from Daf Beis Al Shei Maschach Kari Sukkah. It's all about the schach. All of a sudden, Rav Yishia is coming along and teaching us an ayah that we all of a sudden care about the walls. What's going on with the walls? Says the Gemara. Where does Rav Yishia get this from? Explains the Gemara, D'chsev v'sakoisa al ha'aroin es ha'paroiches. Literally, and you should cover over on top of the aroin the paroiches. Now, don't make a mistake that I'll just be honest I made. It doesn't say kapayres. It says paroiches. The paroiches is the curtain that separates between the kodesh and the kodesh hakadoshim. The paroiches. So the pasuk says the paroiches should cover over the Aron. What in the world does that mean? The Parayches is not covering over the Aron. The Parayches is separating between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Says the Gemara, Parayches mechitza. And yet, Kakarya Rachmanas Chacha. Even though what is the Parayches? It's a curtain, it's a mechitza, it's a partition. And the Torah is calling it a cover. Alma mechitza v'schach v'inon. So therefore, what do we see? We learn out from here. The mechitza also has the din of schach, has the din of partition.
So, the sukkahs today, people have it full glass.
Oh. It is very interesting. Yeah, we don't pass like Rav Yishia.
Right,
but yeah.
A lot of times we still do the chametz.
Yeah, it is interesting. It is interesting. I there was a time, I saw someone had a shtickle Torah in. Everyone here already said it's very nice. He said you have a see-through sukkah, which many people have, or many people have just tons of windows, or things like that. Barring the wall issue, l'chayra, you don't have shade. It's a good hara. I think I saw someone one time made episode like that. I think so.
It all depends where you built and what time of day.
So that's a different sugi that we have to get to when it comes to ruach mitzuya, which she touched upon once, which is how do you don it? It's a big machlekes mishabura chazon ish, whether it's don de ich sheyeh, wherever it is, or do we don it in a theoretical world without buildings?
Remove the mountain. Don it wherever it is. And
Yeah.
at the time of the day, then
Correct.
Then the question whether it has to be kosher also.
Correct. So when it comes to ruach mitzuyah, this is a very, very big discussion. How do you do it? If you build a sukkah next to a house and your house is blocking the wind, then is that enough? Okay, let's continue. For Rabbanan, what do the Rabbanan do? It sounds like a Gvaldik Raya. That we're saying that a mechitza is called schach. Rabbanan, who didn't of me ported the mechzik schach? Does the picture book have a picture of this? Where's the picture book? Where is it? You have one over there?
There, the bottom left side.
It's saying that the paroiches has to be bent over, shkech. The paroiches has to be bent over a little bit so that it's also considered covering the... No, there's no picture. There's no picture. It just means it's bent a little bit. I don't know. I grabbed I have to check the other picture books.
It's not just a wall, it's also part of
It's not just a curtain, it's also a little bit on top of it. Amar Abaye. Let's just begin the next Gemara, and we're going to begin tomorrow with a Chazar. Yes?
By the prophets, maybe it's a little bit different because prophets, it's to block the view of the Aron.
That's the pshat. That's the pshat. You're right. That's what the words mean. But the Gemara is bringing a raya from there that we see that a partition is called Succah. That's in a chanam. You are correct. That is what it would mean. That it's covering over ki'ilu, meaning blocking it. That's how you would use the word Succah. Amar Abaye, Rebbe, v'Rav Yoshia, v'Rav Yehida, v'Rav Shimon, v'Rav Gamliel, u'Bei Shammai, v'Rav Eliezer, v'Achirim. 8 gewaltige names. Kulu svir leho, Sukkah, Diras, Keva, Be'inan. Lamaisa, of course, we don't paskin this way. But we have 8 gedolim that say a sukkah has to be keva. Now, we're going to go through and figure out who are these 8. Rabbi Ditanya. Who is Rabbi? We learned in our Brisa, Rabbi Omer. Kol sukkah shein ba arba amois al arba amois. Psula. Why? Gemara is assuming it's cause it needs to be keva. Rabbi Yoshia. Hadamaran. Rabbi Yoshia is what we just said. The Rav Yeshia holds that the walls are an integral part of the sukkah. Now, what does that mean that it has to be keva? No. Just because the walls have to give shade means keva. Shtickle interesting, no?
As in there's importance to the wall, which means
Yeah.
you have to build the walls a certain way, as opposed to
Yeah.
if it's alright, then the walls.
Yeah.
You're not talking about the walls.
You have Rashi?
Rashi says a very
No.
interesting 2 words.
No.
Diras keva.
No.
Ve'uyo lishtarish kavua, and then he adds v'nires
Oh,
kebais.
what's
It
pshat?
needs to have a look of a
What-
house.
so what's Rashi doing?
Therefore,
Oh,
Rashi
very
has
good.
the 4 walls.
Very
It
good.
looks like
That's
a-
what they say. The Rimul Nails. Rishonim explain that way. What we're seeing is the keva that we're talking about over here.
It's not permanent.
It's a shtickle different keva. We've seen keva back in Daf Beis, keva, sukkah, barzel, versus sukkah of chveisnish. But says the Gemara, now we see a shtickle naya type of keva. Rabbi Yehuda, Titinan, sukkah.
We also hold la locha. I don't know.
Yeah, the whole last tomorrow.
What do you mean?
Well, 2.5 walls don't count because it's not.
Well,
Oh,
according to these 4, 8.
according to, let's see weiter. Rabbi Yehuda, Titinan, Sukkashi. We had Rabbi Yehuda. If anyone doesn't remember Rabbi Yehuda, you're officially thrown out of Shir. It's okay, you could get back in by learning Daf Beis again. But if you don't remember Rabbi Yehuda, as we're about to quote it, you're officially kicking yourself out. I don't throw anyone out of Shir. That means you're throwing yourself out. Rabbi Yehuda, Titinan, and it's okay. It's okay. You let to absolve yourself. Titinan. 45 seconds. I don't know how to count. 35. Titinan. Sukkashi gavai l'mal b'chavama. Psula v'Rav Yehuda machshir. Rabbi Shimon. Titania. This hopefully sound familiar. Beis Kel Chasan. The Gimel Afilu Tefach. And what did Rav Shimon say? Very good, like you just pointed out. Very good. Gimel Kel Chasan v'Dal Afilu Tefach. Gamliel the Tanya used to go to B'Rosh HaGala or B'Rosh HaSfina on a boat or a wagon. Rav Gamliel Paisel, Rav Akiva Machshir, Beishami the Tanami Shei Rosh Ruba. Okay, we'll start from here. Shkaya Chevra.